I want to share some images of this awakening in therapy. Could I share a gentle one first? A woman, she came to me, and she was never physically or sexually abused, but her parents would scream at each other violently, and they're so angry. They were so mad at each other, they couldn't see how terrified she was. And her issue was that she felt invisible. That was her. She just felt that she was invisible. And she was in a session, and then she said to me, she said, one summer night, they were screaming at each other. I went to the back patio door in the summer, and I opened the screen door. I went out and climbed up in the low branches of a tree. And I closed one eye, and I lined up a twig with a star. And I said to God, if you know I'm here, make the star move to the other side of that twig. And she said, God didn't move this star. And then she said, this is the axial moment. This is the turning. Then she said, but there's something about the remembrance of myself, sitting as a little girl alone in the dark in the low branches of a tree, waiting for God to move a star that moves me. And I said, yes, God. And I said, you know what? Because you shared that with me, I was moved this way. It's true, God did not move the star, but we're moved. And that's how God works in our life, this way. I said, so if you decide you want to keep working with me, let's make a deal. That if ever we get the feeling you're stuck in the work, let's imagine we're sitting together in the low branches of that tree waiting for God to move the star. And we'll walk the walk together. A lot of healing happens like that, I think, seriously. Once I worked with terminal patients at a VA hospital on one of my rotations, terminal lung disease. And there were 4 beds in the room. It's the last stages of COPD. They had oxygen mask on and so on. And there was a waiting list to get on this unit. The only opening would come when somebody died. And my job as an intern, I was to go in and talk to them and chart it about anxiety or depression or things like that. And I went in, and when I went in, the bed was, one of the beds was empty. He was waiting for the new person. When the new person came in, he was a divorced, alcoholic, chain-smoking businessman dying of lung disease. And he had a phone set up near his bed, and he would take breaths with oxygen and talk to his broker, closing stocks and so on. I came up and introduced myself. I said, I'm from the psychological department. We're going to talk. He said, I don't want to talk to you. I said, you have no choice. We have to talk. I said, how about this if we make the visits brief? He said, okay. So I would go in, and it was brief. One day I went in to talk, and he opened up his pajama top. He said, look at this muscle spasm here on my chest, this way. And I went in the next week to see him after he got the biopsy. It was a very aggressive lung cancer coming out through his chest wall. And when I approached the bed, he reached out and he took my hand and held my hand. And he said to me, I wasn't born a son of a bitch, I became one. I think I'm ready to give it up. I said, you're going to retire as a son of a bitch? He said, I am. And he did. He cooperated with the medical regimen. He talked to the other 3, for the first time, talked to the other 3 men in the room. I talked to his adult son out in the hallway. He said with tears in his eyes, it's the first time my father's ever talked to me, ever. And I went in the next week, and he had died. This bed was empty. And the other 3 men in the room, we all said how glad we were that we got to meet him and what a good man he was. Sometimes in the 11th hour, you can save your life and bring other people along with you. That's transformation, I think, this way.